Hello friends, I am Vitaly Portnov. Next week, the President of Russia will hold an expanded meeting of the Security Council of the Russian Federation. Observers believe that it is at this meeting that issues related to the response to the recent successful operations of the Ukrainian Defense Forces against the Russian army will be discussed. As is known, Operation Web has significantly reduced the number of combat aircraft at military airfields of the Russian Federation, and the destruction of railway and road bridges has created logistical problems for the Russian army, which continues its offensive on the territory of our country. American media emphasize that it cannot be said that Putin has already retaliated for these shameful special operations against his country. Rather, it is more likely that the Russian president is preparing such retaliation. Indeed, no country can respond to a special operation by the enemy within just a few days. To do this, it is necessary to know the range of missiles that are either already in service with one's own armed forces or will be produced by the time such a special operation is carried out, the number and types of drones, what is happening with the enemy's air defense, and so on. So what we have observed in recent days, and will obviously continue to observe in the coming days, is in no way connected to Putin's revenge. These are operations that had already been planned by the Kremlin with the aim of continuing the systematic terror against the peaceful population of Ukraine, and from Russia's perspective, increasing the chances that the state Putin despises will surrender to the Russian Federation. And the fact that Russia cannot achieve its goals, and above all is itself beginning to lose military arsenals, only creates additional irritation for the Russian president and his closest circle. At the same time, it must be understood that Putin has chosen such a level of escalation in the Russian-Ukrainian war that it is hardly possible to imagine the possibility of a more serious and more massive strike against Ukraine. But what Putin really needs is to show his own officials that after a series of such obvious defeats, he still firmly holds power and intends to continue the war of attrition against Ukraine for as long as it takes to achieve his goals, which, however, keep changing for the Russian president. After all, we perfectly understand that the real actions of the Russian army and special services are not discussed at expanded meetings of the Russian Security Council. They may be discussed within a close circle of Putin's closest associates in such a way that the intelligence services of other countries do not learn about Putin's intentions. So then, what is the purpose of holding a Security Council meeting? Well, first and foremost, it serves a propagandistic purpose. It is meant to accustom the population of the Russian Federation to the continuation of a long-term war with Ukraine and to the idea that Russia is prepared to remain in this state of war for many years. Secondly, it is intended to demonstrate this determination to continue the war to Western countries as well. Thirdly, Putin, of course, wants to take advantage of the situation with his dialogue with American President Donald Trump, who in fact did not condemn his intentions to continue terrorizing peaceful Ukrainian cities. No matter what Trump says about Ukraine supposedly creating a pretext for Russia to bomb it, we understand perfectly well how Ukrainian strikes differ from Russian ones. Ukraine destroys Russian Federation military equipment and facilities used for aggression, while Russia intentionally and deliberately targets peaceful Ukrainian cities. To ignore this, you really have to be Donald Trump. It is also obvious that at the expanded meeting of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, they may discuss the issue of continuing the so-called Russian-Ukrainian negotiations. Of course, Russia has no real interest in the process of talks with Ukraine. However, it is important for Putin to demonstrate that he is open to diplomatic initiatives from Donald Trump, who has in fact distanced himself from the actual negotiation process and is now insisting solely on direct talks between Russia and Ukraine. This was recently reiterated by his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. For Putin, such a turn of events is completely normal, because it once again demonstrates that in the diplomatic duel between Trump and Putin, the absolute victory was won by the President of the Russian Federation. After all, the President of the United States insisted from the very beginning that Russia should cease fire along the line of contact with Ukrainian forces, and only after that hold negotiations for a lasting peace. Putin, on the other hand, stated that Russia would not allow any ceasefire before an agreement on peace was reached, And this has been repeatedly repeated by the president of the Russian Federation himself, his press secretary Dmitry Peskov, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation Sergei Lavrov, and other Ukrainian officials. And it can be said that Putin broke Trump, who turned out to be incapable of taking any tough actions against the Russian Federation. Or perhaps the President of the United States is not so much incapable as unwilling to take such actions, because he continues to see Putin as his future partner in yet another round of illusory economic deals. At this point, it is difficult to understand the true motives guiding Trump in his relationship with the Russian president. However, if at the expanded meeting of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, Putin once again emphasizes that he is ready for further negotiations with the leadership of Ukraine and is willing to seek paths to peace, this will allow Trump to continue blocking any new sanctions against the Russian Federation, to refuse to agree to any joint decisions with the Europeans, and to hinder his own congressmen from passing a law on new sanctions, even if it is purely symbolic. So it can be said that the expanded meeting of the Security Council of the Russian Federation will be convened in Moscow, not for the sake of revenge, but primarily for propaganda purposes. And of course, we must be prepared for this new propaganda offensive that will follow the meeting. Because I do not rule out that in the speech of the President of the Russian Federation during this meeting, new demands will be announced to Ukraine and new accusations will be made against Ukraine regarding its conduct in the Russian-Ukrainian war. And what is important is not even what Putin will say at this meeting, but rather how the President of the United States will use his statements in his apparent unwillingness to continue participating in the negotiation process between Moscow and Kyiv. And most importantly, to continue and intensify the pressure on the Russian Federation in order to force this country to stop its aggressive war against Ukraine. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel, subscribe, follow our social networks, Patreon, and buy me a coffee, which helps support and develop these resources. Make use of the sponsorship feature on YouTube. Wishing you victory and peace. Good luck.